Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 10 of the We Can Do Better conversations. And we're excited today to invite conversation with our guests, Tetyana Azarova, Mali Phonpadith, and Alberto Gonzalez Otero on purpose, the concept and the notion of purpose. And this is going to be a conversation that we hope you'll engage with in the comments afterwards and bring your perspective. The richness of these conversations, the intent of these conversations is to bring richness and diversity of perspective. And that's why we've got four of us here instead of just maybe a one-on-one type of scenario, which hopefully brings a little more enrichment, maybe depth to the conversation, and allows us to explore the topic in ways that might connect with you, because we've all got different stories and experiences around purpose. And so with that, I'd like to begin the conversation with asking you all, what does purpose mean to you? And I'm going to invite Tetyana to kick us off with that.
So I thought about this before this meeting, and I realized that I would not have a very simple answer. I don't know, just in few words, I consider it a guidance system, but I realize that it has various layers. It's multi-dimensional view for me. And when I think of purpose, the next question comes, purpose of whom? Purpose of human being or for human being. And then I realize I have at least two dimensions there. I have human dimension and I have being dimension. And human for me is a more material or form dimension. And being is a more, for me, is more spiritual dimension or immaterial. And then the whole different interesting dynamics unfolds when I start thinking of purpose, cascading into these two different dimensions. So I don't want to take too much space, but this is my short introduction. I can expand on this later. I want to give other guests room to talk about their vision.
Thank you for that, Tetyana, in terms of getting us started. We'll be going into depth on this topic in multiple dimensions. So thank you for that introduction and for sharing what that purpose means to you. Alberto.
Well, you know, if you Google that, you know, and I didn't do this right now, but I did it for a, you know, a project that I did with the university here in The Hague. You know, you get something like the reason why something is created, or the reason why something exists. And you know, I believe on that. Some people think that you are born with a purpose. Some people don't think that way, that you can kind of discover it as you go as well, but maybe you don't necessarily have a purpose. I always said the same, you know, I don't really care. I think it is good that we know why we are here and what impact we can make. So I think for me, purpose is a combination of, you know, doing something that we love to do. If, you know, if we don't love it at the beginning, we can learn how to love it. And, you know, that also creates an impact to others and a positive impact in that case. And that's purpose to me. You know, something that you can do, that you love to do, that you become good at doing, and that, you know, impacts others positively.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Alberto. Mali.
I love your answers, Tetyana and Alberto. I think for me, purpose is a combination of both, as you had mentioned, spiritual as well as pragmatic, born with certain attributes that lend itself to your purpose, but allowing life to inform ultimately the roles you get to play based on the gifts that came with you, but the talents that you've been able to acquire living in life. The experiences that you've been able to go through in life also inform. So when I think of purpose, I think it's a combination of the soul's work, the things that you naturally came with as a being on this planet, and a combination of all the things that are layered into life, which is life experiences, nature versus nurture, all the inputs that come in, and being able to get to a place in your life where success and the emotions attached to success is driven by this desire for significance, this desire to create impact, this desire to gift of yourself more, an elevated sense of self to your own existence. So for me, purpose is a combination of both the soul work, the spiritual side, as well as the pragmatic life things that you collect over time that informs you what's uniquely mine to do, what has been gifted and given to me as an opportunity to create goodness and opportunities for others. So that's kind of a summation of both what you said, which I agree with, and that's my definition of our purpose.
So wonderful starting points. Thank you to each of you for your perspective on purpose and on what it means to you. For me, and it gets a little bit to what Mali was sharing, it just kind of came to me as you all were sharing it, it's the soulful expression of meaning to express who you are and create impact. And so it's this connection to soul and meaning, and it's the expressiveness of that to a purpose beyond yourself, to create impact and intention. And there's a service element to purpose as well. And so for me, the elements of intention and impact are a huge part of purpose. And the energy, as Mali was pointing us to, and Tetyana, in terms of the human and the being, comes from me from the soul. And so it becomes an exercise of connecting to your soul. The ego-soul dynamic is something I've kind of played with a little bit. And so that becomes an interesting notion to kind of think about: the human and the being, the ego-soul dynamic, and purpose. And is it something we are born with, like Alberto was pointing us to, or is it something that we find, or is it something that finds us? As something that came up in a recent Humans First conversation that got me thinking differently about the topic. What if our purpose finds us? What about that notion? What comes up for you when I share that?
I will say, Brian, that for a lot of the clients that we work with, and even myself included, there have been hints and clues, messages, if you will, from the universe. When we start to become a little bit more connected spiritually, whatever your religious beliefs are, that to me doesn't matter as much as this connection to something greater than self, as you mentioned, right? When you really start to explore that side of you, you will get messages, I like to call them, but hints and clues. And you'll start to see there's a book that I'm reading, it's called Flow, and it's about the law of synchronicity. And I love that because it's based on science, and it's also at the same time based on our emotional desire, what draws us, what inspires us. And what you said about sometimes purpose finds us, because sometimes there's a need that we are so equipped to serve, but we never thought about it. Because we're in a zone, we live a certain way, we've been told a certain story, we start to believe those stories, and we don't think of other options for ourselves. But then you get these hints, and it's like every day you're bombarded with all these clues, and it's just like slapping you in the face sometimes to tell you that, no, this is yours uniquely to do. This is something you have been built and designed to do and to serve and to give. So what are you doing? Why aren't you paying attention? So there are times in my life where I have been thrown these hints, and it's like, I didn't even know they were mine until finally there's just no denying that this is what I'm supposed to do right now. This is the direction I'm supposed to pivot into. So there is that component. I have experienced it myself, and I can say, yeah, sometimes your purpose, your role at that particular place, phase, and time in your life is something that is just unavoidable. It's serendipitous, and it's just like undeniable.
It's funny that you mentioned that, Mali, about getting slapped in the face. I think for most of my life, I've gotten slapped in the face with messages and wasn't aware of it. And that gets us to the noticing and the being aware and the frequency, the spirituality element that Tetyana was initially pointing us to, and we've all kind of talked about. And then you mentioned story too. And so the notion of that's come up for me during the course of my journey is the connection between purpose and story, and how there typically is a connection for us in our purpose to our own story. So when I mention that, what kind of comes up for you? What is the relationship, if there is one, with your purpose and your story?
Well, I think, and I agree with Mali as well, purpose can find you. I also said, I was in that call, the Humans First call with you and Mike as well, he mentioned this is to, and you know, I think purpose can find you, but I always think that it's better if you start trying to find your own or trying to discover it, right? To be more proactive, because maybe it doesn't find you, right? And then you spend your life, you know, waiting for that to come to you. And you know, I'm more like a, yeah, maybe practical, but I believe in that you can make your own path and you can discover your own purpose, and the more time and effort you spend on that, the quickest you will find something else. And it's to your point, starting with yourself and to, you know, knowing yourself, who you are. And the same thing, some people take purpose more spiritual than others, and at the end, whether you believe in something else, or you believe in others and other human beings, it doesn't really matter. It starts from knowing yourself, knowing what drives you, and your story basically helps you to know yourself. And when you look back, it's something I did also in the last less than a year that I'm doing my own thing, my own business. I realized of moments in my life where I thought, whoa, actually at that time, you know, I was working for several companies, and I was helping those companies, or I was discovering their purpose just to help myself selling stuff, because I needed to sell their products. So my only way to keep going and to be able to sell it was to find how my product was helping others, right? And I had to convince myself that the value I was providing to be able to, you know, to get going. And then I realized this last year. I said, oh, you know, actually I was, you know, making kind of a purpose statement of every company I worked for in the past, without knowing that, well, someday I will help companies to do the same, right? So your story helps you get where you are, but it is important to look back and reflect on your story and you know, to learn from those things, because we often just keep going and then we don't realize that, you know, someone was slapping. Right? Yeah.
It's maybe an analogy we can all connect with. Tetyana, what are your thoughts?
I just wanted to build what was already shared, because it's kind of related to the work I did in my dissertation on deeper meaning of people's struggle and inspiration. And this kind of builds on this idea of purpose finding you, or you finding purpose. It's like a combination of both. And we are born into the system, all of us. We are born into some cultural rules and environment, or historical tradition, different economic, social, whatever. And we get conditioned by external environment. And this kind of dictates us a lot of around value system, beliefs, and ideas of the purpose. So for quite a long time, we are conditioned until either something knocks on our door, so like a brick falls on the head, or something like that serious event happen in life that awakens us. Just wake up, think about, you've been living conditioned by external beliefs. What is about you? What is your true purpose? And then often people start asking these questions, or sometimes they become so stressed and dissatisfied by this external load that they start asking this question ahead of time before a brick falls on the head, because they feel inner void or emptiness, or just so stressed that they cannot bear this anymore. And I've learned this by interviewing people and by observing my own life, and that's how it was turned into dissertation and interesting exploration, and found this connection to the spiritual side of this discussion, that inspiration often was that kind of a route that was trying to grab person's attention and almost like a flashlight. Look here, look here, you know, there's something else than what you were conditioned with. and trying to link human to that other realm that was not considered before, to that spiritual realm, to that soul realm. And often it didn't happen right away, but from the stories people I interviewed, it was cycles of struggle and inspiration until they kind of walked closer and became more aligned with that purpose, feeling, articulation. It wasn't right away. Often it wasn't right away.
Go ahead, Molly.
I would love to add, Brian, that, and I think all of us on the call, you were saying earlier how perfect it is that all four of us are on this call, because it's what we do in terms of our line of work as well. It's working with leaders, working with businesses and organizations to help navigate their purpose, to provide them with a strategic direction. And when it comes to storytelling, what I find really fascinating in our mapping process, and Alberto, you'll appreciate this because you map purpose as well, is we have our mapping process called the SOAR mapping process. It's see, own, articulate, release. And it's the A, the articulate piece that you're talking about, Brian. I really, really want to highlight how critical it is that each human being understands that they do have a story. I think it is a parallel track that your purpose and your story go hand in hand. There is a component of our mapping process where we go deeper than the why. We talk a lot about what's your why. We go in and we really try and uncover the motivating why. And that's where your unique story comes from. It's the why underneath the why. We have a tendency for the outside world to talk about why something motivates us, why we've chosen this purpose. But the deeper meaning behind that why is something that happened, something that you witnessed as a child, or something that you witnessed somebody else going through that somehow felt so immediately connected to your soul's work. You just knew it like you knew it, but you couldn't explain it maybe as a child, and it follows you through life. So we look for that motivating why, and then we help craft the story. And more importantly, we help reframe stories, because we oftentimes grew up having one vantage point, and that becomes our whole story. But then as we grow up, as we start to become more evolved, as we go into more mindfulness, we realize, wait, yes, factually those things happen, but I can tell a different version of that truth. That's more empowering. That's more about giving back to society versus what's wrong with me, victim mentality. So there's so much that goes along with how important and how crucial the storytelling component is to how you're messaging your purpose, not only messaging, but walking your purpose as well.
It's for me when I changed my relationship with vulnerability, right? And so I had a story about vulnerability that affected how I showed up, and it wasn't congruent for me. And it's ironic, right? And maybe that's just how the universe works, is that I'm working with people that need to shift their relationship with vulnerability so they can either be different personally, create the version of themselves that they want, or they know that's always been there, but they've only seen glimpses of it and kind of have retracted to a version of themselves that is no longer the version they want to bring forward, or they let go of a belief that may no longer be true or maybe never was, right? And so this notion of story and the elements and the roots, or as Mali was talking about, the motivating why underneath the why, right? So I think purpose is a journey. We keep refining it in terms of as we go along and pay attention. When we learn and connect to how to pay attention to the flashing lights, as Tetyana was talking about, or the messages as Mali was talking about, we started saying, wait a minute. At one point, my purpose was this, but no, it's not really this. It's this, and then a little bit more, or it's a little bit more refined, because we're getting new data. And one thing that I made a connection, I was listening to all of you in terms of inspiration and the different elements we've been talking about. And this goes back to my purpose and my relationship with vulnerability, helping to frame that is, that's when I connected to my heart. Because I use this joke all the time that up until then, I probably was 99.9, the ivory soap example of in my head. And there's 0.1% that I was probably connected to my heart, but it was that connection piece to the heart. And I think that's what happens during this journey of purpose, is we connect to the heart. And then once we're able to kind of pay attention to not just visual messages we may see or maybe hear things, we're connecting to stuff that's happening and feelings in our body. And that changed everything for me, to understand, not only to be able to feel it, notice it, and then extract meaning from it or connect to the meaning from it, I think that's an element that's important in terms of how do you get clarity if you're not connected to the indicators of all of you, right, including your heart. And so that brings up for me in terms of your journey with your purpose or with your business or yourself. And there's multiple purposes, right? There's our individual purpose in terms of our life. And then there could be the company we work for, aligning to that, as Alberto was saying, and understanding the purpose of the organization. And then how do I connect with that in order to be able to sell the product I have? And so there's multiple dimensions there, but how have you gained clarity of purpose for you? And what has that journey been like? What are the highlights of that journey you'd like to share with folks to help them understand that it is a journey and that there is the notion of struggle? You talked about the cycles of struggle and inspiration. That's so beautiful, Tetyana, because that's literally what the experience feels like. At least that's the way it was for me. So what are your thoughts on that?
So to illustrate that, I can share my own story. And there was some pivotal moment about 2.5 years ago. And I always was directed towards learning. Even before I did my top values check, I was very much learning oriented. I did well in school. I studied, I went for a number of degrees, MBA, another master degree, and then PhD, so you can get the feeling of it. And it was interesting, but I work in corporate finance in more analytical capacity as a finance manager. So that was quite structured and became a little bit same kind of type of work, and didn't feel like enough learning or expression of my alignment with learning. The interesting part that opened me to a completely different dimension of my purpose was a spiritual experience in 2017, when let's say in a ceremony setting, I got the clear realization that my purpose, or that was a message of my calling about teaching and knowledge sharing, and was very clear on different levels. When I realized that there is no coincidence that I'm so learning oriented, and there was always passion in me to not only learn but share with others. And with the spiritual experience, I also became open to the whole new world, like a spiritual dimension that I didn't consider before. I only considered material dimension, what we commonly aspire to in this material world: career, getting this kind of education and this kind of advancement in skills and other stuff. And here I realized there was something much deeper. And of course, I also was reading literature on this and research to expand my knowledge. And then I realized that my purpose is not just teaching and knowledge sharing. It also has a deeper dimension, like a deeper why behind why, as Mali mentioned. This was for me to become a bridge of material and spiritual for people who lack this awareness, who did not yet awake to this awareness, who are only on the journey of exploration and need some support to connect material dimension and spiritual. And then I realized how that also connects to my story, why I learned a lot about living in material dimension and being in corporate. And I realized that environment, especially corporate, is so disconnected from spiritual dimension and needs this kind of knowledge, needs this kind of guidance to understand how this is important and valuable for their environment and employees and human beings who work for them, because they're still human beings and they bring their spiritual needs and their spiritual dimension of being to workplace. It doesn't disappear. You cannot command that to be thrown away once you step into the door of the corporate space. And it's a huge work, because that knowledge is still suppressed in the corporate space, and people often feel so disconnected, disengaged, demotivated, as Mali said, because they cannot connect with that deeper dimension which is calling them, which is asking them to expand to their full being, whole being, not just material, not just sitting in head and analyzing a balance sheet or P&L statement. So this is kind of how I became awakened to my deeper dimensions of purpose and how I can be of service to others in this capacity.
Thank you for sharing that, Tetyana. I truly can totally relate to that. Coming from corporate America and now running my own business, helping people map purpose, just kind of like the spectrum. And being, for me, purpose came in the form of understanding that as an adult, I really didn't have a memory of a time where I felt free and blissful and joyful. I'm a child refugee of war. The memories I have are on a boat in a refugee camp, crossing the Mekong River, coming to America, poverty, working really hard at a young age, teaching my parents English, focusing on school, graduating top of my class. And it was always driven by this notion of lack. We don't have enough. We will have to get out of poverty. Let me do what I need to do. And I'm so grateful for all of the decisions as a child that I made. It was like a child making adult decisions. And at the same time, I remember in my early 30s, and I was in financial services, using my brain, the left side of my brain, very well, but forgetting the fact that holistically, I'm also a very creative soul. My grandmother is very intuitive, and I have been able to be given an extra layer of intuition as one of my gifts. And that was just blocked, right? It was just like blocked away. And when that happens, when all of you can't express yourself, you start to feel internally something is wrong. It's almost like your body is telling you that your soul is dying. I mean, that's just how I was experiencing life. I was getting sick, and I'm like, why am I getting sick? I was the thinnest I've ever been. I was active, and yet deep down in my soul, I felt I couldn't be the full version of me. So there were emotional indicators for me that made me pause. There were physical manifestations of my sense of well-being and purpose and joy. So my body was telling me something was off and not in balance, and definitely not in alignment with my purpose. And then there were also the earthly things, the material things that were telling me I was making all of this money in financial services, but yet my mind and my bank account did not match my heart and my spirit. So I just started to really think about all those indicators, and my purpose came in the way of really being honest with myself and asking myself, what do I really want out of life? Do I want to feel disconnected? I want to be living my life in full expression, which means my creative self needs to come out and play, which means the left side of my brain that has been developed because of life circumstances also gets to play in this world as well. And so that's how my purpose was kind of like raising this big red flag saying, you're not living on purpose. You're not living in full expression. That's why you keep getting sick. That's why you don't feel fulfilled. And I would try everything. I would join this club. I would join that club. And then there was also another component where life taught me to stop and pause and just start really being more mindful, start meditating, all these tools that growing up in the Asian community, we had these tools. My grandmother meditated. She talked to birds and everything was, connected. I was not using my tools that I knew existed, tools that I actually had access to right inside of me. And that's when in my early 30s, that's when I said, you know what, no more trying to survive. I, as a human being, have a right to thrive, and I need to choose that. I need to choose that path. So combination of having a series of losses, a lot of I lost a fiance when I was 27 to a drowning accident. I lost my father after a 3-week battle with cancer. I lost a best friend to suicide, many painful losses. And with every loss, I always say to a lot of my friends and even my clients when we map purpose is that every loss brought me back to life. Every loss reminded me of how they lived it, how much value they brought to the world, what their legacy was. I have been at so many funerals. I have been the last person to be next to someone when they took their last breath multiple times in my life. And it just reminds me that if we are breathing, if we are living, we are so freaking blessed. And that helps to remind me every day to be on purpose.
Love that, Mali. Thank you for that.
What can I say now? Yeah, I leave the call, guys. It was a pleasure.
Well, so clarity of purpose for you. You've just started your own business. So how did that decision come about, right? How did your connection to the messages of the flashing lights, as Tetyana would say, lead you to that choice?
Well, as I always say, my background is in sales and sales leadership roles. For almost 20 years, I've been working in sales, and I don't like sales, right? So that tells a lot. It is a journey indeed. It took me many years. It is also how I am at the end. Well, I did my bachelor, my master's, and after my master's, I just wanted to work. And where I'm from the north of Spain, it is a beautiful region called Asturias, but there are not so many companies. And I got a job, and my first job after my master's even was knocking doors on the streets selling encyclopedias, ringing bells, and I hated that. They lied to me. They told me, no, this is not to sell books, and all this like long story of lies. But the fact is that I just wanted to prove myself that I could work and I could, just make some money, and I did. And because I connect well with people, I think people normally trust me quite quickly. That helps, selling as well, right? When you have something of value to them. And so that's the reason I did well in sales. And then from that job, I was, getting a better job at a better company and so on. But I always thought, like, how can I do something else than selling? I don't want to sell. And I had very good moments, in selling, of course, in making money and the bonuses and everything. That's also, that's always great. But I always have this feeling of unfulfillment. And so, I can do something else, but what first in the first place? And how, if I find something, how can I change? Because I have all these years of experience selling, and that's what I do. And it was indeed a journey, and I had through this journey different, what I call inspirational moments. And that's through books I read, through videos I watch, keynotes that I listened to. And I have a couple of main ones. And one was this TED Talk from Dan Buettner, How to Live Plus 100, I think is the title. And that's a guy, Dan is from National Geographic, or used to work for National Geographic, and they did this research, the blue zones research. So they studied where in the world people live longer, right? And where those spots there where, the proportion of people living longer was much higher than in the rest of the planet. And they found these 4 spots. They call them the blue zones because they had a map on the wall and they just put some blue dots with a marker there. And they went there and, just to analyze, to understand what they did differently. And they conducted interviews and had many, they observed the people, but also they asked them, hey, what did you do at different stages in life? What did you eat? Did you exercise or not? And all of these things. And they found this Power 9, what they call the Power 9. So 9 factors that in the first 4 blue zones that they found, which are totally disconnected to each other. One is in California, a religious community there. Another one is in Costa Rica, another one in Sardinia, and the 4th one was in Okinawa in Japan. So very remote from each other, but they were actually doing kind of the similar things. And one of them was purpose. And I believe that having a clear purpose, knowing your purpose, helps you with the other 8 factors, right? because you just live led by purpose, but that kind of big goal for yourself and to help others. And so, well, that inspired me. The word ikigai, that's also in that tech talk.
Ikigai.
Yeah, indeed, and which some people confuse with purpose. It's not exactly the same. Iki means life, and gai means worth, but it refers like, it is more like learn how to appreciate the things that you already have, rather than trying to find happiness somewhere else. That's a bit, that approach, and that really also inspired me. And then together with other things, and then I kind of developed an exercise for myself to help myself discover what was it, what could I do differently, or what other job, what my purpose was, and that's based in the ikigai, but also the same thing. There's this diagram. If you Google ikigai, you see this diagram with 4 circles, right? And the ikigai is in the middle. That originally is a purpose diagram. It's not the ikigai, but people trying to sell the ikigai or westernalize the ikigai thing because it's more trend, it's more marketing. Let's say they just change the word purpose by marketing by ikigai. But those circles, like what you love to do, what I mentioned before, what you are good at, what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And if you tick all the boxes, that's maybe your purpose, right? And I this combined with different other questions. That's the exercise I created for myself. It helped me to find my why and my purpose. And that's what I do now, also with other people and with companies, and to using the same exercise as a core, as a practical thing. It's not rocket science, but it really helps, because the first step is to make the time to think about these things. And the problem in society and problem in people is that we are too busy. And we just don't stop to reflect about, we don't question, hey, what drives me, what actually, and if we think about it, we are always thinking about it, but we have it here, but we don't put it anywhere else. So the exercise is about writing down these things, and that helped me, and that's how I help others too. So
fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, it literally was a journey. You brought us through that. That was awesome. And the concepts of ikigai and your journey there is inspiring, right? We all kind of have our journey that helps us connect to who we are and how we want to serve, right? And as you were writing it down, talking about connection, right? First it's connection, right? And so what's the relationship between connection and purpose and lived purpose? And the messages and the lights that flash and our ability to connect to them, and these underlying sort of important ingredients, if you want to call them that, of awareness and openness, vulnerability maybe, to discovery, to learning, as Tetyana was pointing us to, and also willingness to adjust. Oh, wow. I think this is my purpose. I could get rooted in, this is my purpose, that's where I'm going. But what about new learning that comes up every day because you are open and the world's sending you signals every day, and which ones do you choose to pay attention to? And how do you make that choice, right? Is it cognitive, like early pre-2013, Brian would have gone into his head and probably wouldn't have gotten much enlightenment from that, right? Post-2013, and maybe even more better 2020 version of Brian, more openness, because the journey with heart has given me different capabilities for noticing, for awareness, for reflection. As you know, we've got to take the time to pause, Alberto, like you're saying, to reflect and say, what is the world telling me? What is this conversation telling me? What is this situation telling me? And connecting to self. So I think for me, once I got connected back to myself, because I saw myself showing up in pockets, right? And so once I got connected to that guy and got some learning from other people, and honestly, someone else held up a mirror to me. That was part of the journey, right? I see this in you. You might want to think about going to Georgetown to go to the Institute for Transformational Leadership program. And it wasn't the first time someone had suggested that, but it was the time I was ready to hear it and take action to it. So there's that element of we are where we are in our journey, and the readiness factor of I'm still on the way to get to that path, and maybe I'm not ready yet, is something to honor too. And so this notion of not being judgmental about the journey too, is just open to and accepting of, there's different clues coming up. What am I connecting to? And what do I want to, how do I want to use this to better understand myself and create better, whatever that means to you?
And you can be wrong too. That's the thing.
And yeah.
That's, not you. I mean, in general, but I thought that, I think my purpose is what I'm doing right now. And that's totally linked with who I am and what I want to bring to this world as well. But then there are different ways of delivering on that, right? So, and you can try things and you can think, no, this is it. And then you start doing it. And then all the energy that you thought, you will get from it is not there. And so you realize like, oh, well, no, because when you start doing things, you see how they are in the reality, right? And that's also something to consider as well. Like, it is, once you think your purpose, start doing it and see, but be open to review that, because maybe what you think is going to be, it's not. I thought that coaching individuals was my core thing. And then I realized that I get more energy from doing things with groups of people. So, cool. I learn by doing. It's not that I don't like the one-on-one coaching, but I still do it. But if you give me a choice, I think I can create more impact. I can, I get more energy and I can provide more value. That's my feeling after doing it with, different groups and different companies and individuals. So, there is one sentence that I also mention sometimes in my workshops as well. And this from this book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a...
Yep.
Can we say that word? Right? It's like people in general, they are waiting for, for inspiration to find the motivation to start doing things, right? So inspiration, motivation, action. And it's the other way around. You need to start doing things. Then you will find the inspiration, and then the motivation will follow, because then you will know what works, what doesn't, and you just craft your own path. And I see things from that perspective as well.
Thank you for bringing that, Alberto. I love that. And you helped me think about the power and the impact of noticing your energy and how that affects your ability to see differently in terms of connecting to these vibrations or these light, flashing lights or the messages, and deciding how you want to serve. You talked about coaching. You may have been great at it. You may have even enjoyed it to some extent, but you found a different energy once you were in small groups, and paying attention to that. It's not that your purpose was wrong before, as you were saying. It's just now you've clarified it in a different way, or there's a new version of your purpose that is the next chapter for you, right? And so it's evolving, right? And so maybe it's an evolution. And so love that point. And so if we think about that, how is being able to connect to your energy and your awareness around that helped you create better through your purpose?
Talking about energy, but I did want to say something with Alberto. I really appreciate what you shared, because I feel like the word that I was thinking about was refining our purpose, right? We get to refine that every day because we get more input. I mean, data gets inputted, and then we make determination decision based on data. Data to me includes energy, right? Includes how you're feeling when you go in and you take a move or make a move or take action. So I would definitely say that it's constant refinement, and that gets recalibrated every day based on experience. Secondly, also, I think what people have, I've learned through just our work, is that people have this notion that you have to map up to one purpose. And what I always tell folks is that it's the overarching theme that you can claim to be your purpose, but we have so many different hats that we play. You can't just have one purpose. Human beings are so layered. You know, I am a wife, I am a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a community advocate, I'm a community builder, I'm an entrepreneur, all those things. And I have a purpose in each of those roles. But as a legacy, when we map up to our legacy and we map up to that sense of real purpose, I think that's very important for those that are on this exploration where they get frustrated. Like, I'm supposed to have one purpose. Like, how do you get caught up with that? My suggestion for those that are watching and my colleagues here and my cohorts here is really, it's about, again, looking at the whole journey of your life, looking at all of the experiences that you've been gifted with. I always say things that happen for us, not to us, right? We hear that a lot. And really thinking about every single moment, experience, widgets, tools that have come to us that didn't go to somebody else is ours to shape and form and then repurpose for the world. So I just want to say that because it's very important for people to understand that it's not about mapping one particular purpose. It's mapping to what's mine to do overall holistically. And then from there, you can work backwards to see the pragmatic, tactical things that one can do to move into the direction of your North Star /purpose/legacy. So I just want people to have a little clarity on that. Short answer to your energy question. Everything is energy. The feelings that I'm having, the emotions and the exchange that we're having over the wire with someone who is in the Netherlands right now, and then we've got the Ukraine, we've got Washington, Pennsylvania, right? We're all over the map, but together in this circle, having this conversation, we're like right there together in one room. And I feel like energy is so much more powerful than we give it credit for. Energy moves us, it inspires us, it also challenges us, it tells us something is wrong. Something is wrong in your physical gut right now, right? Energy, physical manifestation of that energy are all hints and cues. And I feel like if we can honor our own selves to feel through our body what the energy is telling us, we would be a lot more intentional about how we interact with the world. So mindfulness, meditation, breathing techniques, everything that we can do, use our tools to so that our body and our spirit and our minds can truly feel truth and understand truth. That's what it's all about for me.
Thank you for that. That was beautiful, Mali. Tetyana.
First of all, I want to say thank you. I enjoy so much this conversation and sharing that Alberto and Mali provided so far. I just love it. I resonate a lot with it. And I want to build a little bit on what you already shared. On what Mali just said about people often being attached to this one grand purpose. I felt just working with some people that some of them often are fixated on purpose as a goal. And when they see purpose as a goal, they often don't understand that they can get themselves into this trap of the goal setting automatically becomes a limitation of something, because if you put something in a box clearly defined, and once you reach it, you feel like you are striving for more. This is, you already got this level. What's my next level? And then what? This was my purpose, and you become dissatisfied, and it's like, I failed again, and this all kind of stuff start piling up. I failed at my purpose. What is my purpose? So not to set purpose so concrete. Purpose is not a box. It's not a goal. Having a spiritual dimension of purpose, it always implies there is a fluid component. There is something that is open-ended, that invites this exploration, invites this daily checking into yourself, into this alignment, into this energy. And I like word alignment, but any other word can be like feeling, daily feeling, am I aligned? Like what's my body saying to me? What's my whole being is saying to me? Because conceptually or logically is very difficult to discern what is true or untrue. It's only the whole system, and an energy is the huge component. And I was not aware about that a while ago. Now I'm more aware and open, and I would just feel into my energy. And if I'm feeling empowered, if I'm feeling positive emotions aligned with that, I'm clearly on my purpose. There is no doubt. And this is when I am talking with people, when I'm guiding them into this journey of their kind of purpose alignment. This is what I'm bringing their attention, like your whole being, your energy, your emotions, congruence with that. And then you can, after that, you can conceptualize, you can explain what's going on. And the funny part of this, that this can be used even in your daily work. There are exercises for this, even in people who are at their jobs and they feel like, oh, I'm trapped in this job and it's totally worthless, I don't like it. However, even at that job, there may be periods of times that you enjoy something and like it, but if you track your energy fluctuations throughout the day, you can find activities that makes you ecstatic, that makes you smile, that makes you totally aligned. And I now, or a little bit later, when I started reflecting on my journey, so I'm like, okay, so what was about finance that I didn't like? And what was about finance, or my role at corporate finance, so to speak, that was so aligned with my purpose. Now, as I know my purpose more, kind of a little bit more clarity around that. And I see these pointers about my kind of teaching calling or knowledge sharing calling. I see it was already embedded in the work I did with others. And I provided teaching in different capacities around, like, let's say, basic finance one-on-one to salespeople or engineers who had problem with that, or educating around how to navigate your P&L and understand where you perform and where you underperforming. That was my form of teaching at that moment, at that time. It was relevant. Maybe it wasn't my most aspiring kind of teaching, but I already was able to manifest that, and I was receiving very positive feedback from other people, and I felt very good at those situations. So now I kind of reflect on that. Oh, there were clear indicators that I was aligned with teaching. I just didn't think about this. I didn't check into my body, but I do remember some positive emotions. So that's kind of what I wanted to add to what Alberto and Mali already shared.
Beautiful addition, Tetyana. Thank you for that. And so I feel like we could have this conversation for hours, and I'd love to do that. We always come to this point, and it's like we should have a version 2.0. So there's likely going to be a version 2 if you guys would engage with that. I'd like to kind of transition to our close now by thanking you, first of all. So thank you, Tetyana, Mali, and Alberto, for an engaging conversation and a diverse and a great learning conversation as well. And so as we come to close, I invite you to consider what is a learning or a thought you leave the listeners with regard to purpose, our conversation today, and just a message you'd like to invite them into. Tetyana?
So one message, I think important one, I would invite everyone who didn't yet consider that to stop, to pause, and to reflect on their life journey. It is so valuable. There is so much learning. There is so much treasure. Just pause, reflect, and you can get so much clarity. You can get more alignment with your purpose. You can get a lot of other things, but that's an invitation. Reflect on your life journey more often.
Thank you for that, Tetyana. Beautiful. Mali?
I'll give a tactical and pragmatic suggestion is I would say take a piece of paper or a journal and just go be quiet with nature. Because I feel from an energetic and spiritual as well as scientific biological standpoint, the energy from the earth refuels us. The wind, all the elements, they come together. And when you're in a place of curiosity, just get curious about how am I feeling about my life. Ask more and more questions. Don't try and answer them. Ask them, and then be with nature, and then allow whatever comes through to write it down. Don't question it. Don't try and rationalize it. You know, the answers are all within us and all around us. So I would say, from a very pragmatic, tactical, start with that. It's a sense of pause, as you were mentioning, Tetyana, but it's also allowing yourself to be informed and to get curious and keep asking questions. Just keep asking questions, and whatever you write down, ask more about what just came through you, because it takes a little while for here to transfer into the physical manifestation of what that looks like. And I would say that that gives you a lot of indicators. So for those that are just kind of like, okay, where do I even start? I would say, let's start there and see what happens.
Thank you, Mali, for providing a purpose or a practice with regard to kind of discovery and curiosity. Love that. Alberto, how about you?
Well, I always finish my workshops with this sentence on one slide, that the most powerful thing that we can be is ourselves. As you know, Mali said, you know, we have all the answers, and it's not like people think that it needs to be something else. No, sometimes, you know, it is about learning to love what we really do already, what we already have, and appreciate things, because if we are always in search of more and bigger and something else, you know, we are never going to be happy. So just appreciate what you have. Take the time to know yourself better. Write things down. Indeed, nature is also something I use based on research that creates, you know, even a walk, 25 minutes walk a day in nature increases your problem solving and creativity skills by 50%. Well, that helps you to, guess what, have more clarity about your purpose. So that's what I would advise everyone to do, and to try to do things, but for a reason, for a purpose, and that is linked to your core. And the last bit, and to complete the last topic we talk about, what I said before, the core is not going to change. You know, I think who you are, you know, it changes a bit, but the core of who you are doesn't change. Like for me, my purpose is to help others, you know, starting from my family and then my friends, relationships, and, you know, my customers, connections, and help others, be of serve to others. Then how you deliver that, you know, I could work at an NGO doing some stuff. I can do, you know, I could do so many things, and that would be a job that would be aligned to my with my purpose. But, you know, it's keep searching, keep looking what gives you more energy, but spend time to know what's your core purpose, who you really are.
Wonderful. Thank you for that, Alberto. I guess my contribution on top of those three wonderful takeaways and shares will be to disconnect, right? So we're talking about purpose. What are you saying disconnect, Brian? We're supposed to be about connection. I mean, disconnect from your life, like you all are talking about. Step into nature, develop a pause practice of some sort. Just be with yourself. And so disconnect from life so you can connect to you, right? And so it's the discovery process accelerated for me when I started connecting inside and then paid attention to what was happening around me. So it was an inside out process. And so I'd invite you into that. Like Mali walked us through a practice. There's meditation, there's different breathing practices, there's going for a walk, just disconnecting from or disrupting your pattern so that you can create new and explore the learning that comes from that. And so with that, let me just quickly invite you all to share, how can people connect with you? What's the best place for people to connect with you? And we'll kind of also put it in the write-up following this. But Tetyana, what's the best way for folks to connect with you?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn? Yep.
Welcome to most invitations. Humans first.
Humans first, yep. We've all got that in common as well. Thank you. Mali?
The best way is also LinkedIn or visiting our website, and it's SOAR, SOAR, communitynetwork.com. And I, like you, Tetyana, I'm very accessible. You can email me at mali@soarcommunitynetwork.com, and I answer all my emails. So no assistants answer my emails. I answer all my emails. I'm accessible. Thank you so much, Brian, for this opportunity to share.
Thank you all. And I can attest Mali does do that.
Oh, and also Humans First, definitely a part of the Humans First movement. I love what they're all about. So I'm grateful to be a part of it as well.
Thank you. Alberto?
Well, same on LinkedIn, and also on my website, justonpurpose.com, and my email address is alberto@justonpurpose.com. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and yeah, also Humans First, the same thing. You know, I'm also there quite frequently. So yeah.
Thank you, Alberto. And thank you all again for a wonderful conversation. So now I'd like to invite you all, the listeners and the watchers of this We Can Do Better conversations. What are your thoughts around this? What are your experiences around purpose, the process, the journey, the discovery process, the practices you've used to help connect to your purpose? And share those in the comments below. Help extend and expand the conversation so we can continue to create better together. And that's my invitation for us all. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the next episode.